Now, the modules I'm going to be using for this particular webinar is going to be our 3-axis Pro module, okay? So the nice part is we have a little slideshow prepared for you guys to start out with, just to kind of give you an overall view of what we're going to be going through. So to start it off, we'll go to the first slide of the actual option. And just as the overview of this webinar will provide tips and insight into producing better parts and programming for 3D jobs, okay? What will happen is you can actually go ahead and next one, the topics we will be covering will be how to reduce programming time and calculation time to try and help speed up those times for you guys machining out your parts, because obviously the faster you can get a job done and programmed and on the machine and out the door, the more money it's going to bring in for you. How to reduce machining times, how to help speed up how long it takes for machining by using options like rest machining, stuff like that. Okay. How to achieve a better surface finish, how to simplify toolpath calculations, and of course I want to bring in the option of full machine simulation. So how to improve your machine simulation. Now, what's going to happen is after we go ahead and we have those options here, all right, we are going to go ahead ourselves. And the first one is how to reduce programming and calculation time, dynamic machining strategy. We have the options in here for your machining strategy, your templates, being able to control the current operations and everything like that. So you guys can actually customize all the options. Maybe you guys use a specific standard of Toolpath, and you want to use those same 4 toolpaths each and every time. You will have those options here, and we'll be able to go ahead and showcase that. Now, if I go ahead after that, we're going to go over the reduced machining time, okay? Calculating toolpaths, using the previous tool, rust roughing toolpaths, okay? Then we're going to go into better surface finishing. One particular toolpath we'll cover is the equidistant toolpath, okay, to help with those same scallop heights, a uniform all the way across the part to really help produce a better surface finish. Now, the other side of it is how to simplify toolpaths, how to make more toolpaths specific to what you're trying to do using different functions like angle range. Being able to say, you know what, I just want this one to only cut on angles. We're going to go over some of the angle range options. Obviously, how to improve your machine simulation. Obviously, this is really important, especially if you're using custom-made fixtures. You would like to be able to bring those in, test the parts, see how they sit, and that way you guys can actually go through and make sure there's no collision checking across every portion of that. So with the 3-axis Pro, to dive into it, this is actually a model that I've brought in. Now, a lot of people, you get part files from customers, you have other options as well. We're going to go ahead and make sure that we can actually go in and start programming this. So this is the model we brought in. I haven't repositioned or anything. It's actually not sitting in the 0 or anything like that. One of the things I like to cover with the way the BobCAD is set up is it doesn't matter how that model comes into the software. What does matter is that you go ahead and you set up your job properly, whether going to that part, whether bringing it to the area, it doesn't matter. What I normally do, and I say this is the best part, is when you open up a file from another software, our software says, okay, well, what type of job is this part going to be? That way you just pick milling. You will then have your machines down here, which you can store your machines. And then you're going to go ahead and hit Stock Wizard, okay? When you hit the Stock Wizard option in our software, what it actually does, and mine didn't start for some reason. Hold on. There it is. When you actually start the Stock Wizard, it asks you what type of stock you're using. Rectangular, cylindrical, wireframe, solid model, STL file, or revolve. The nice part about that is you have a wide variety of options which you guys can actually go through and pick your actual stock types. Now, once you go ahead and you hit next from there, it'll put a bounding box if we picked rectangular in this case. It automatically finds the model and puts what we call a bounding box of material around it. Now, you guys can then go in and make the adjustments as needed to the actual size of your stock. And then when you hit next, the most important part is picking your XYZ 0. Now, the nice part with this is you can pick origin. You can pick anywhere down here. You can pick anywhere on the model, and you guys can go ahead and actually set up the direction of your guys' cut. X is one way, Y is another, Z is vertical, those type of options. Now, after we have that situated, we can then go ahead ourselves and hit OK. Once we've done that, it loads our job in. So now we have our machine and post processor. We actually have our tooling library. A few new points of the actual version 28 for those who don't use this one. You actually have the ability now to draw custom tooling, okay? What I mean by that is you can actually draw the profile of your tool, add that into an option. When you actually go in to add a tool into the library, there's now an option called Assign Tool Geometry. So you can actually draw your tools and bring them in. Right-click on the stock. I always blank mine out. That way I don't have to see it. Another little side note for you guys, if you just want to make the stock transparent, you can go down to the transparency. You guys can lower the transparency of that particular stock, hit OK, and you can actually change it. Okay? Oh, the other way. High transparency. Boom. And that way you can't even see it. Or if you want a little bit, obviously you can go ahead and have a little bit of it. All right? So it just depends on how you want to, but you guys have that ability. Otherwise, you guys can just blank it out. Now, after we have that pretty much sorted out, we will then have the ability to go down here and right-click on the actual material library. There's over 5,000 materials to choose from in here. These are designed to help you guys with the calculations of your machining time. If you don't know what feed rates or anything like that, you guys will have the ability to go ahead and actually sit there and use one of our materials. When you type in your tool data, it will try to go ahead and give you the best option for you to be able to cut with that tool. Now, after we have that done, we then go ahead and say, let's start on our actual piece. We're going to go in here, right-click on Machine Setup. We're going to go down to your options. You have your drilling options. You're going to actually have your 2-axis and your 3. We're going to be focusing on our 3-axis options, so we're going to select that. Now, all of our tool paths obviously open up with the wizard. The wizard is nice because it's designed to take you guys from point A to point B of setting everything up. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually go ahead and hit Select Geometry. Once we go ahead and we pick the Select Geometry option, we can then go ahead and pick our model. Right-click OK, and then we can go ahead and hit Next. I'm not going to worry about a boundary right now. We'll deal with that later. Now, you go in, you choose your rapid plane, your feed plane. Okay? Now, we're going to come across something we were just talking about in the strategy. There's strategy 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay? And these options. These are customizable. So what I mean by that is we're going to backtrack out of this so you guys can see. Go down here to our tool pattern. Okay? You go into your mill features, and then you're going to go down to your 3-axis template. And you have strategy 1, 2, 3, and 4. So for me, let's just say I want to customize this one. Let's get rid of that. We'll add equidistant. Let's throw a flatlands toolpath on there as well. So I'm going to customize this. We have advanced rough, equidistant, flatlands. Okay, just so you guys can see, we hit OK. So now what that does is when I change those strategies, and that's where you guys can customize all features, when you do that, that allows us to pick that. So we don't have to then sit there and go ahead and use all of our different toolpaths back and forth. I'm able to actually sit there and define the different settings and everything like that. We're going to go down here to our option to go down to mill, let's just say 3-axis again. Select our geometry. We'll go through the initial steps again. Now, what will happen this time when we go into strategy is if we pick strategy 4, it has the toolpaths we use. So I don't have to sit here now and bring over the different options. I can just go ahead and grab my strategy that I need and let it rip. Then if I hit next, I'll go through my settings. Okay? What's going to happen is you have the advanced rough option here. Okay? We're going to go through and set up this. So we type in our tool data of what we want to use. Again, we have our feed rates. You guys can also assign your tool holders. Once you guys actually assign your tool holders, the nice part about it is that those will be in the actual machine for collision checking. So sometimes you'll look, if you do assign a tool holder, which you guys can, now you guys can just pick that strategy each and every time you guys need to. That way you guys don't have to worry about anything. You have everything set the way you need it to be. So if I go ahead now and I go down, let's define our tool. You guys can also go in and actually define your tool holders to your tools. So once I've done that, I can hit next. And we have the option to choose zig or zigzag cutting. You have adaptive options. This is for your high-speed style machining where it's going to take helical moves into your part. Instead of just engaging 180% of your tool, it's actually going to take swipes at it. Okay? The nice part about it is it helps with your tool wear and everything. And then you have your typical cutting options. So we're going to go ahead and go through, define our depth of cut, define our step over. You have your actual options for XYZ allowance. What the XYZ allowance is the ability to leave material all over the model. One thing that we have done, which is really nice, is we've added in a side and bottom allowance to help with speeding up the machining process. So instead of having to leave material all over the place, maybe I just need material on the floor, or maybe I just need it on the sides. I can now use those options to help with that, so I'm not having to do an operation to machine out everything and actually clean up all of the material I've left over the part. Okay? So nice part being that once we have all this stuff sorted out, okay, you then can go ahead yourself and move on to the next phase of it all. And on the next phase, we're going to do XYZ allowance on this particular case, and we're going to say, 0.01, 0.01. After you've done that, you hit next, and you move on to the actual option. Now, here's the neat part about this particular toolpath. You have center cutting tool where it can plunge. If you turn that off, it doesn't give you any of the ramping options because it's going to force it to start off the model and then move into the machining process of it. Now, what's going to happen is after that, you're going to hit next, and you're going to go through your actual advanced roughing options. So what's going to happen is you're going to go in and actually choose your diameter of your tool. So we've done the first rough. Now we want to do a second rough to help with the machining process. So we're going to throw in like a 1/4 flat end mill. Okay? Now what's going to happen is after you go ahead and you have that situated, okay, give me a second, we will then go ahead and you still set it up the same exact way. So you're going to tell it exactly what you guys want it to do. The difference will be once you've set your depth of cut, your step over, you make sure you still leave the same XYZ allowance because that's what we want. But in the actual options tab of the actual advanced rough, you click on rest machining. What our software does is it pulls the info that it needs. All right, so now after we've done that, we go on down to our equidistance. So that's going to machine that area. So just for right now, we're going to go in, define the rest of the settings for this. So on the finish pass, we want to use 1/4 ball end mill. Let's just say. We want to go through here, and equidistant gives us that really fine finish. Now, what's nice about equidistance is it keeps the same step over no matter what the shape of the model is. So if we go in here and we choose our parameter settings from there, we can choose our step over. And then we're going to go ahead and actually choose our lead-ins, how we're going to enter into the material. Okay? All right? Now what's going to happen is after that, we have options in here, and this is where it gets neat because we're going to go over this. We're going to actually play with this particular setting after we calculate it first. We have the boundary options where you can actually tell it to cut outside of boundaries. So let's just say you need to go ahead and cut in a certain area, but you might want to go past the wall a little bit. You can do that. You also have the angle range option in here. And then rest finishing is actually like rest roughing, but with a finishing portion. So it goes in and finishes the area as opposed to continuously roughing out with rest roughing. So that's a nice option we do have. And then we're going to go down to flatlands. One of my favorite toolpaths is the flatlands toolpath. All it does is cut the flat areas of model. It doesn't cut anything else. So if we hit compute now and let that process, we can then go ahead and see what type of toolpath we're going to end up with. And as you guys can see, we have a lot of green everywhere. Well, the nice part is you guys can actually go in, and this is just a little tip for you guys. If you want to change your color, you guys can change the color of the toolpath. Sometimes I'll go in and do different toolpaths so I can really see the transition between the toolpaths, right? Now, one thing I want to point out, I'm going to blink out flatlands. I'm going to blink out this option here. So on the rest machining, right, I can't tell which is the regular and which is the rest. So I changed the color of it. Go in here, color. We're going to go in here and pick a light blue. Okay. Well, now, see all the light blue everywhere? Those are our rest machining, where it's going in and actually machining out the rest of the part that the tool couldn't fit. So that way we're actually saving time and actually getting everywhere we need to, so we're ready for the finished model. Now, what we're going to do in this particular case, let's hop into some simulation. Let's take a look at it, and then we can make necessary adjustments as we need to. Now, when you jump into the actual simulator itself, we're going to use full machine sim. And you guys are going to see something pretty interesting that I'm going to have to show you guys how to do. And the reason why I'm doing it that way is so you guys know every step. So if you do have Machine Sim Pro or you want to get Machine Sim Pro, you'll know that when you run into this particular scenario, setting up your machine, that you guys can adjust it and fix it, okay? All right, so in the actual simulation itself, and if you guys want a bigger window, you guys can widen it. We're going to go ahead and hit play and just kind of watch it tear into the piece. As you guys can see, there's our holder. If we want the full machine, you have the option to turn it on, and there would be your full machine. If you look, my part's sitting in my table, though. That's not going to work. we're going to need to make the work offset adjust, okay? So what's nice is I'm going to go ahead and shut this back off, okay? Let it continue through the simulation so you guys can see. The nice part too, if you guys look down here, I don't know if you guys have ever noticed in your simulators that we actually have the little line targets. These are where it changes toolpaths. So we know that we have the rest rough, or the advanced rough, then the rest, then the equidistant, and then the flatlands is a different color. So we can go ahead and speed this process up because we need to go in and make some. All right, rest machining is going there, and then we'll go ahead and go to the equidistant. Now, if you guys are having a lagging issue with the video, it is because the simulation does take up a lot of the resources. It might be lagging on your guys' particular end. Right now, we're into the equidistant, and I can slow it down. And as you guys can see here, one of the nice parts is I can see the collision checking turned on. So it's actually colliding with the back because the tool isn't long enough. We can make the necessary adjustment to that. All right. Okay, so now we kind of know where we're at. The nice part is your guys' collisions will actually show in red each time. If you want to know what it particularly is, if you can't tell by the simulator, it'll tell you in a report over here so you guys can make the adjustments as needed. All right, and as you guys can see, we're getting that really nice finish as we're moving up. All right, as it continues upward, now we're having this nice smooth surface finish. Okay. Okay. So if I just pause it, because we're going to have to come back in here anyways to make the adjustments here, but we're going to fix a few things so you guys can see it. We look at the surface. You guys will be able to actually zoom in. You guys can go over to the actual refining options, okay? Under the actual view, or verification, you have apply refine. What it does is it actually focuses your graphics card into that certain area that you've zoomed in on. So when you zoom in, you hit apply refine, and what it does, it focuses all your graphic intention so you guys can actually see scallops better. You know, that way you're actually seeing what's going on and stuff like that, okay? So now, let's go ahead and get out of there. Let's go back in and make our adjustments. Obviously, we know now we need to make a few changes. So one of the neat parts is you can go right back into the wizard and make your adjustments to your toolpath as needed. So what you do is you go in, and in this case, I'm just going to change the length of the tool to fix my actual problem with the actual equidistant. So I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to say my flute length is like 3 inches, and my overall length is 5, and then I should be okay on that one. And we'll make this 5, okay? What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead after that, and we have another issue, which was I left the ball end mill on this one, and we're going to change the flatlands to be 1/2-inch tool, okay? Now, I don't want to hit compute because what that's going to do is that's going to calculate all the toolpaths again. If I just want to calculate one toolpath, all I do is I hit compute. Hit cancel, sorry. I'm going to have to recalculate it all now. What you're going to want to do is you're going to go to that option, right-click on it, hit compute toolpath, and what it does, it will only calculate that toolpath. You can go to each feature in the tree, even though they're still linked together, and you guys can just calculate the one toolpath if you'd like. With the repairs, and then I'll just calculate this one, and the advanced rough and stuff won't take that long. So there's that, and then we'll go ahead just for example purposes. We need to adjust that work plane offset for the actual full machine sim so you guys can actually see that. To do so, you need to go back into your actual machine setup, edit it. There is a work offset that you guys can adjust in Z to whatever you need the height to be, okay? And then you hit OK, and when you make that adjustment, now when we go into the simulation, so you guys can see, give me a second, it'll have that adjustment point. So that's how you guys actually can sit it on the table. You guys can sit it in fixtures based on where the actual work offset is defined in your actual machine parameters for that particular type of machine. And I'm going to turn on my actual machine sim and see how now the actual part is sitting on the machine. It is no longer sitting under the machine. That's how you guys are able to. So you guys can actually see what the full machine sim looks like. When you're actually in the actual simulation, you guys can see that if I zoom out a little bit, you guys are actually able to see the whole machine move. What's nice about it is it's actually moving as if it was cutting the machine. What we do is you use your kinematics of your machine, your limitations of your axes and everything like that to actually go in to the actual options, and that way you guys are actually able to go in there when you guys are actually doing it, and you guys key in all those options. Just talking about. So going outside the scope, if you look, see how it only is cutting those areas that are outside of the scope of 0 to 30? That'll speed up your machining time because you're only isolating the other areas, and then everything else you can finish up if you're trying to do that. Now, certain areas like this, we might want to cut this with the same toolpath. So we might want to do a different setting. But that's a really good example to see what angle range does. It really does go down that scope of going, like right now we have it set to 0 to 30, and we're cutting everything outside of 0 to 30 degrees. Look at everything it's actually doing. So it's without me having to define boundaries or do anything. I can have the software calculate those toolpaths based on those settings. And in turn, that will help with your speeding up of your machining time. Isolating the areas you need to without you having to do a lot of extra work, creating boundaries, drawing boundaries, selecting surfaces. We have a lot of tweaks for you guys to go in and use now. Now, to wrap everything up, to sum it all up for you, obviously this is just some info for you guys to see. We are going to save this recording. We will put it up if you do want to watch it, if you were having any sound issues or lagging issues. We're going to have this up. Now, again, if you guys have questions on anything, feel free to let us know. We will try to answer the questions as best as we can, getting you guys the proper answers on the software. But to wrap this up, obviously the next step would be when you're generating something like this, to generate your G-code and your setup sheet. You right-click here, you hit post. It's going to generate your G-code over here on the right-hand side is where I have mine set up. You can have your posting option set up wherever you need to, but that's totally fine. It's going to post out the G-code over here on the right-hand side. We're then going to have the ability to also generate a setup sheet where we can take all of our info. So here's all of our code for this particular part. Okay, there it is. And then you also have the ability to generate a setup sheet where BobCAD takes all of our info, outputs it into a setup sheet for us, so we have all the data for whoever's running the machine, or if we want to store it. Okay. So the nice part is you can get all your data in a nice organized fashion and have it set up and ready to go. Now, one of the nice parts with this particular case is after we have everything sorted out in this, we can actually exit out of here, go ahead in here, and we can say, okay, now that that's defined, we've got everything, we're ready to go on the machine. Now, last little bit I'm going to give you guys, and this is a nice option. When looking at the code, sometimes you're going to run into where you have a bunch of X and Z moves, okay? What's going to actually happen is you're going to go ahead, you're going to have the option to right-click on Machine Setup, and I want you guys to see something. So if I'm outputting line moves when trying to do radiuses, that's going to lengthen my code, and I'm going to have a bunch of jagged moves. In the advanced options for posting, you have, for 3-Axis Pro, an arc fit option and a tolerance for it. So if you guys want to output more arc moves instead of line moves, go in here, and you guys can mess with the arc fit tolerance to help output more arc moves on your cuts as opposed to your line moves when you're cutting apart. Okay? Now, I would like to thank everyone for showing up. I do appreciate you guys coming in. This is the most we've had in a webinar in a long time. We're going to be adjusting and making for the next one, prepping. I do apologize for the one being down the week before. That won't happen again. We'll make sure that we have everything and even a backup solution. So I do appreciate you guys taking the time. If you guys have any questions, feel free. I've been trying to funnel all the emails that I've been getting with questions and everything like that. So please go ahead and let me know. Shoot me an email, respond to it, and I will give you guys an answer. Thank you and have a great day.